What is going on, Clippers fans? Welcome to Season 3, Episode 39 of Clips and Dip. Kawhi Leonard is back with the Clippers. Adam, Will, and I are back to talk about Kawhi Leonard being back. We are Clips and Dip. Thank you for hanging out with us. I am Chuck Bockler. Adam Osmond is here. So is Will Updike. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch us at youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. We're talking mostly Kawhi today. We're talking how we felt he looked in his debut at Intuit, expectations now that he's back. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Nuggets and Wolves road trip. But before we get into that, fellas, Adam, we know we're burning daylight, so we will get into the Clippers talk quick. How are you doing? How does it feel around 24 hours now that Kawhi has returned for the Clippers?
I feel good about it, as good as you can. As I said earlier in the season, I'm never going to feel secure about it ever again with Kawhi in his right knee because he played 68 games. Everything was fine until it wasn't last year. And this new issue is something they're going to have to manage, and that's ongoing. But it was still great to see him last night. The lift on his three-point shot was big for me, knocking down. I think he started 3 of 3 from distance or something like that. He looked very smooth. He said post-game, the basketball part is easy for him. It's just getting out there. So overall, it was cool to see. It was a special night, and it almost felt like either he picked the perfect game and the perfect time to come back, or it almost felt like it was meant to be, like it was our night or our year for Kawhi's return because everybody played so well in his first game back.
Will, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really, really good. I mean, the only thing I could take away from that win that in a negative sense is that just, not a great opponent and they weren't at full strength. But a lot of things went right for the Clippers, and it's hard to not read too much into just like how much more on their game everyone is with Kawhi Leonard out there. There's a certain sort of ease. There's also a certain, at the same time, a sense of urgency for just how important this is. And I think, everyone who's been close to him in this situation knows that any time that you have on the floor with Kawhi Leonard is kind of precious. And I think that it definitely ups the ante for like what is expected and what you need to do out there on the floor. So I loved what I saw. Like I said, a lot of stuff went right, but it's hard to not take away that there seems to be a different level of sort of congealing. Like I feel like this team is already been meshing really well, and the vibes are already so good. But now there's like just a little bit of an extra fire underneath there that I think that I'm hoping continues to translate as his return ramps up.
I like that you said, minutes on the court with Kawhi are precious. It's not wrong. You're not wrong.
And I don't think anyone is like, I don't think anyone is unaware of that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
they want Kawhi to succeed as much as everyone else, and they know that they got to make the most of their time out there, and at the same time make things easy on him.
For those that missed it, the Clippers trounced the Hawks. They were shorthanded on the second night of a back-to-back. I hope they went out after the Lakers game because the Hawks did not have a good trip to Los Angeles on the basketball court at all. That defense was putrid for parts of that game. Clippers kind of dominated everything. It was bad, dude. Adam tweeted at one point like the Hawks just don't care. And it on the defensive end, it really felt like that. Will, to your point, to kind of playing a depleted team, they let Derrick Jones Jr. had 6 dunks against the Hawks, which is the most dunks he's ever had in a game. They just forgot about him on the baseline. They'd lose Norm in transition. It was like, okay.
Terance too, didn't he? He have like 3 baseline, three baseline dunks.
We'll talk about Terance's return. Terance's return was more surprising to me than Kawhi's, just in terms of how good he looked. No disrespect to Kawhi looking good, but Terance looked maybe some of the best he's looked all year. Kawhi was on the minutes restriction. He ended up playing just under 19-25.
Yeah.
Unclear how long that's going to go, but not surprising. I think 20 minutes feels fair. Adam, do you like the longer? Ty Lue mentioned, we're going to run him in longer spurts. He came back last time. He was playing 4 minutes a shift, and then he was kind of out. Now we're going to see the longer shifts. It seemed like it paid off last night, at least.
Yeah, and I wondered if in that second quarter, because they were rolling, and he came in at the 9:59 mark and played till like there was a minute and a half left in the first half, if they just said, keep it going. We're not going to need him in the second half. Just keep running this with Kawhi right now because we can get up by 20 as they did at the half. I think it was 74-54 and just end the game right now because we're humming out there. So I'll be interested to see how they allocate the minutes if he gives them that long of a shift against Minnesota because they might feel like they need to more evenly divide up the minutes with 10 in the first half and 10 in the second half. And I do want to say that before people get mad about this, it's going to happen, and it might happen tomorrow. The Clippers are going to be in a tight game, and Kawhi Leonard's not going to be available because he's going to hit his minutes limit. And it might happen tomorrow. And just know that's coming. I don't think they're going to expand it more than 20 minutes in the game, too. I think it's still going to be 20 minutes. So,
with travel,
reason
too.
Kawhi,
Game 2 with travel. Game 2
That's
with travel. So it's like
That's
not
good.
even like
That's
it's a
good
home
point.
game. Like,
yeah. The reason Kawhi was the one to suggest coming off the bench when he came off the ACL was so he could play more minutes late in that game, which did pay off because he hit a jumper against the Lakers over LeBron James that helped them win. So the difference now is it's going to be harder for them to have any minutes left late in the fourth quarter for Kawhi to play unless they pull him after like 2 or 3 minutes in the third quarter in a tight game.
that's a good call. Yeah, people are going to definitely be upset about that. I like the foreshadowing on your part, Adam. And Will, you were like, Kawhi was what? La Marie tweeted this out. In the second quarter in Kawhi's minutes, he was plus 21 just in that span. So I think that goes to your point of like people were a little more, there's like a responsibility to not let Kawhi down. And I feel like everyone, especially in the debut.
Well, and I'm in favor of the theory of longer shifts. I think that it helps him get in rhythm. It also like it just establishes a little bit more consistency. You know, like if Kawhi is out there in these short stints, I feel like, you know, Ty Lue talked about like a tendency to like watch Kawhi, and I think that's very true, right? Like how is you know in the back of your mind the emphasis not, you know, getting Kawhi the ball, getting him involved as much as possible when he's only on the floor in these short little stints. So while you do have to manage that with needing him late in games, overall I'm in favor of this approach versus like more short stints personally.
And the
Coach
short
Lue
stints,
also said, sorry, Chuck.
Go ahead.
Well, you said they're treating it like preseason. And in
Yeah.
preseason with a starter and a star like Kawhi, you may not play much at all in the second half. So they may lean towards playing him more in first halves if they're treating it like preseason. And second half, whatever. This is not, they're not pushing to win a game in January with Kawhi. They're going to go off the minutes restriction. And if he runs out of minutes early in the third quarter, I mean, that's it. You just have to expect it.
And there might be almost like an offensive restriction for Kawhi. And like, because on defense last night, he kind of did a lot, I thought, in his debut. He guarded Trae Young at one point. He was contesting threes well. Like, his presence was very much felt on defense, but he was asked to do a little more than I maybe thought he would in his debut. Offense, completely other side of the coin. You know, he was hanging out on the perimeter. I think he only dribbled. He did one drive in the half court. Like, he had Trae Young on him at one point, tried to fade away, missed it, got it back, and passed out of it, which I think, to me, that was like, he's still very much like maybe he doesn't trust the burst yet or something like that. But offensively, and he talked about it post-game. He said something to the effect of basically like, don't expect me to go out there and score 20, 30 points right now. Like, that is going to be, and I don't know if it was like a team thing, but the team was playing well around him on offense, even though he was I don't want to say non-factor because that's not true because you still have to account for him.
But not all the touches.
Activity-wise, yeah, touches-wise, that's going to be a much, not by a bunch, but a slower ramp-up than defense, it seemed.
Yeah, which is surprising just because that is what's been more needed for this team. But I do think they're just trying to be conscientious of the effort level on both sides. And I mean, again, it's another hard thing. Like you can't take like many constants from last night's game just because of, you know, who they were playing, how that panned out. I mean, was that the highest scoring Clippers half of the season?
I think so. They scored their most
The
fast break points
I don't
ever.
think it was most points in the half, but it was most points in a quarter with the 45 spot they put up in the second. But it was close to most points in the half with 74. I think they might have gotten 78.
Jeez.
But I
So
don't
yeah,
think Kawhi can.
Oh, what I was saying is like I don't know that that's necessarily like a rule, you know, like I don't know
Right.
how much they're actively lightening the burden on him offensively, especially when he is so needed. But just his presence out there, you know, Norm
The
talked about it.
spacing. Oh,
Everybody
my
talked
God.
about how everything was like a little bit easier. And that's certainly going to be true. And that's going to have a massive impact, even if he's ramping up touch wise.
I think he can control his activity on the offensive end more than he can on the defensive end. It's just so instinctual for Kawhi to fly around on defense, and that is a problem. That is leading to more miles being run per season, but it's also what makes him great. So what do you do about it? It's kind of like, what was the old Chris Rock line about the tiger? That tiger didn't go crazy. The tiger went tiger. Like, it's just Kawhi and how he is on the defensive end. Like, this is who he is. He's a monster on that end. When he sees somebody with a basketball and he gets switched on to Trae Young, he's going to sit down and get in a defensive stance. Like, he can't help himself there.
And we saw it. I loved it. He blew up a dribble handoff for a steal and couldn't finish on the layup, but that was awesome to see. And his first foul, he almost got a steal. So you're totally right to that point of like instinctually defense. He's going to do it. Like it's just going to happen. How are we feeling about the rotating starting five? Because that's a new thing, I think, kind of to some surprise to some people. Chris Dunn started yesterday. Derrick Jones Jr. did not. Ty basically said it's going to plan on how they're guarding Harden and stuff like that. How are we feeling about it right now? Will, you have a smirk.
Yeah, I'm gonna contradict basically everything that I've said thus far, and I will say from this sample size, let's just make Derrick Jones Jr. Let's just make DJJ the starter. I think personally that it makes more sense. I don't really get why you need 3 guards out there with Kawhi back. Especially like with some of Dunn's shooting woes. I mean, not that DJJ has necessarily been better from outside, but I like the look a little bit more. I like the size a little bit more. I like the athleticism a little bit more. And also, I mean, I think we've debated about this until the cows come home. Like, is it more difficult to cover, a modern day 3 or 4? TBD, but Derrick Jones has the size and he is switchable and can guard a lot of spots. I like that a little bit more. Dunn obviously great defensively, not a whole lot on the other end. So I'm a bigger fan of that. I think I feel like it's a little silly even to have this debate, like to even need this sample size. Like, why do you need 3 guards in the modern NBA?
You think eventually the Derrick Jones Jr. lineup will win out? Because there's going to be a set lineup.
I would be very surprised if it didn't. We would have to see this bench unit, like with him in it, like whatever that rotation ends up being, do some very special things. And I just, to me, it makes a lot more sense to keep DJJ as a starter and to just go back to that look. I personally think it makes a lot more sense.
Adam, what say you about the rotating starting lineup?
I think in a video game, and you can just switch guys in and out, and there's nothing to worry about with personality conflicts or just rhythm.
Yeah.
It makes sense to go with Chris Dunn against a team like Atlanta because they want another ball handler out there. And he probably is the overall better defender against someone like Trae Young versus DJ. But
True.
DJ can do it, and he can also guard up against DeAndre Hunter, or if Jalen Johnson was available yesterday. The versatility with him is the difference maker for me because of his height and long arms. I think eventually the reasoning behind, well, we want another ball handler out there to alleviate some of the pressure on James Harden. The difference is going to be as Kawhi ramps up and gets more minutes and has the ball in his hands more, that argument is going to fizzle away for having Chris Dunn out there because of the ball being Kawhi's hands more at that point. So I do think DJ will win it out eventually.
And Not that he's exactly lighting it up currently from 3. I think he's like 2 for his last 10. Derrick Jones Jr. outside the arc is a little more trustworthy this season than Chris Dunn, which I think is also something to consider too, right? Teams are fine with Chris Dunn shooting the ball. Teams aren't as fine with Derrick Jones Jr. shooting the ball. And him in the starting lineup, that opens it up more for Norm, like it just – I think eventually it'll win
just
out.
The versatility, I don't know, just the versatility off ball too. Like Adam said, I think that to me it's just kind of a no-brainer, I guess.
And again,
I think DJ is 2 for his last 22 from 3.
Is it 22? Because I was just looking at the quick last 5 when I was tweeting last night, and I was like, damn, this is a little bleak.
Because his 3-point percentage right now, what is it at? 35%? 2 weeks ago, it was probably closer to 45%.
He's shooting 35%. Oh, it's bad. 0 for 3, 0 for 2, 1 for 3, 1 for he took 6 versus the Pelicans. That'll get you if you're Derrick Jones Jr. That should probably never happen again. But there also is this is inherently a temporary thing. No team has gone into the playoffs with we've been rotating a guy out for the last 25 games. I just don't, with a fully healthy team at that point, there's going to be a set lineup going into the playoffs that I just think I would be a little worried. I don't know.
I agree, but at the same time, I trust Todd. He can tinker with the lineup to his heart's content. So when I say no brainer, I mean that's to my much smaller basketball brain than Ty Lue's. So I'm in no way criticizing that. It just to me seems like a more natural fit, I guess I want to say.
And I think you kind of have to do this a little bit, right? Just because we haven't seen Kawhi with any of these guys. So it's I don't know if it's a competition, if it's going to end up like that, but I think it's going to shake out to Derrick Jones Jr. being in that starting 5.
Yeah, and it is interesting because he hasn't played with either of the 2 guys that they're rotating. Right. So maybe they're just getting a sample of what Kawhi looks like with both, and they're tracking those numbers, as I'm sure they are. I'm not saying that's the intent behind this, but they're going to look at who has the better net rating next to Kawhi as well over this time. I just don't see how you can continue to justify, well, if DJ's playing better than Chris Dunn or the versatility is being utilized more, that you don't eventually go away from Chris Dunn because the ball's in Kawhi's hands more anyways. If the point is, well, we can't have it in James Harden's hands all the time. Well, once Kawhi gets up to speed, it's going to be in his hands a ton. So therefore, what is Chris Dunn doing out there as having another ball handler when you have that in Kawhi?
Yeah, and he's I like handling the ball, not shooting well.
I really like your point about data too, because this clearly isn't just about starting lineups. And we're also thinking, forward to closing lineups. And with Kawhi Leonard being limited to these stints, I think it does make sense to sort of play with things a little bit because you have so much, you have, much less time to sort of play these things out, especially if, like we've talked about, for the foreseeable future, he might not be in closing lineups depending on his minutes load.
That does matter. That is.
If any team can pull this off right now, it is the Clippers because of Coach Lue's tinkering, because of Kawhi's limited availability, because of the guys who have done this over the years for them, and
the egos.
This is their normal.
I do think this is a rarefied situation where you do have the temperament and the personalities where you can do this. Not every team could say that. This could cause a friction in a lot of other locker rooms.
I love Derrick Jones' quote last night. When they asked him about the rotating stuff, he just basically said, "I don't care. I care about winning. I don't care about starting or anything like that."
And how often have we talked about on this show, don't put too much credence into who the actual starters are for this team. You got to watch the rotations.
Yeah, and 4 of the 5 starters are set. That's the other part.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about expectations now that Kawhi is back in a sec, but we do need to talk about Terance Mann's return because Terance Mann returned as well and looked as good as he's maybe looked all season. Terance Mann comes back. A lot of people are now assuming that KPJ is out of the rotation. I don't think that's true. It's very clear that Mo Bamba's out of the main rotation. But I like Terance making Ty Lue, if he can continue to build on this first game. Granted, it was, it's first game in 4 weeks. I like that he's going to have to make Ty Lue think about some stuff with some of the rotations. KPJ and Terance looked pretty solid together last night. But it just seems like it pushed Mo Bamba out of the rotation. It doesn't seem like anyone else got pushed out of the rotation with Terance coming back bench-wise.
I mean, Bamba was already kind of on the outs.
Yeah. Nico is going to play a lot of center, is what we learned last night, too.
Bamba's matchup dependent. Maybe he plays against Minnesota because they have Gobert, but against a team like Atlanta, anytime Coach Lue can get away with not playing a backup big, he's probably going to.
Yeah, that's a good call. Do we think and I know we talked about it a little bit last episode when we were all together, but are we going to see some 10-game sample size with main bench guys? Like, is Ty Lue or is that just going to be all matchup dependent? Because I wonder, I've been saying Ty Lue wants a smaller rotation, but it's a difference when the smaller rotation is like, spot minutes for Bamba and matchup dependence. That doesn't really count as like a full rotation guy. But now we got the bench is, based on last night, the bench is Derek Jones Jr., Terance Mann, Kevin Porter, Batum, Amir Coffey. That's 10 guys between the starting 5 and those guys. I'm really curious to see what it looks like.
And 8 of them in double digits last night.
Yeah, that was nuts. I'm curious to see what the bench starts to look like closer to the playoffs, because we're not running 10 guys in the playoffs. I can't really see that happening with Ty Lue. Not that it's bad. I just don't see it happening.
I think, though, at the same time, like, if you can keep a guy ready enough that you can sort of use even spot minutes, like some matchup dependent sort of switches. Look, man, like this team, the top ceiling talent, is not maybe as high as certainly as some of their other competitors and even years past of this team. So you got to try to find those things on the margins. And I do think that, if you can keep a guy in the rotation enough, I'm not saying that he's like part of the solidified playoff rotation, but even if you can find a path for him to like spot minutes in a matchup dependent scenario, I mean, that's utility. That's, like that's necessary, I think, for a team that's constructed the way this one is.
I think they need to figure out, hopefully Kawhi can stay healthy enough where they can see what they really have with this team so they can find out if they do need to do a consolidation trade, if somebody is expendable, if they are playing these guys and they're able to stay in rhythm for some time, someone's value may go up and they can make a move before the trade deadline. I don't know. I'm not looking at Terance Mann's performance last night in that way. I love what we saw from T-Man. That looked like the energy spark guy. Yeah. And he said it post-game, my job is to keep the energy up because the lead was down to 14. And then he had that nice run in the second half. A lot of his buckets were just extending a double-digit lead. The game was already pretty much over, but he kept kind of the pedal down. That's classic Terance Mann right there. So I don't know if they can keep all these guys happy and just see what happens, who's playing well and how the pieces fit. But in order to really get, a good view of how this could look and who you need and who might be tradable, you need Kawhi Leonard to stay healthy. You need everybody to stay healthy just for a section of time here so you can see what's going on.
Yeah, the other thing is, there's a month, right. There's a month until the trade deadline. So there's not a whole lot of time to figure it out.
I think I would say, just as a caveat, if Terance keeps playing well like this and KPJ plays better as he has been playing, Terance makes enough that's a trade that would be a difference maker. KPJ doesn't make enough to be traded for some, you know what I mean? Like, you just look at how the salaries work. It's not like we would trade KPJ for someone making like $4 million, who's very good and plays like the power forward or something like that. So I think it would probably be Terance if anyone's value were to get pumped. All right, coming up, we do have to talk about expectations. We already know what Will's expectations are for this team. We already know that they're written in stone, but we do have to talk about the expectations. We also want to There was an ESPN snippet going around, and I think we should give a disclaimer on the wording of it if people read it and freaked out. So if you're listening to the audio, there's going to be a bit of a break coming up. If you're watching us at youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast, we're still here. So we got an audio break, and then we're talking expectations in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back into Clips and Dip. Talking about what you've been waiting for all season long, the return of Kawhi Leonard. We got to see it in a little preview last night. Now we got to talk expectations and what this means. There was also a quote that came out. The first place I saw it was from Tamara Zarli, but Chuck, do you want to talk about this? Because it's a little troubling. I think we need some
wording.
Context, but it's about Kawhi and how he's feeling in his return.
Yes. So obviously, as Adam has laid out very well too, like we got to still monitor how things are going with Kawhi. But there was an ESPN snippet that said, and Tamara had a video of this, which is a better answer than how this was transcribed. I'm going to read this. It says, Leonard was asked what would signal to him about how his knees are feeling, whether after games or practices. He said he wasn't sure and that he woke up recently and it was flared up and I couldn't move. So now I'm just keeping it moving and I don't know. It's just day to day. The word recently is not what like Kawhi said in the context of the answer. It's doing so much heavy lifting. It's the last injury he had is what he's talking about. He's not talking about recently, which would, in a lot of people's heads, signal a week ago or something like that, right? Like you see recently and you freak out, but it's not recently. It was the last injury that it happened.
That's what I've listened to it a million times. I listened to the last night's post-game interview earlier. There's no indication there. Did they mean to say? I tweeted at Baxter Holmes like, hey, what's going on here? Because there is a big difference. Do you mean the most recent injury? Because there's a difference between that and recently him waking up and feeling like this.
Yeah, like I don't know. And I do believe, I guess, kind of the flip side of the coin, day to day does feel fair. That coming out of Kawhi, he's coming back after a game. We're going to see how it looks on the travel day, which is today. Like that all makes sense. But the recently part, because I read that and was like, oh shit, like what is recently here? But then you listen to the full context of the quote, check out the wonderful beat writers for the LA Clippers, Tomer, La Murray, Justin Rousseau, for the full quote. But like, it is kind of a nice
be there.
No, it should not be there at all. I saw
the video. I saw the video before this ESPN thing, and I contextually, I didn't think that he was talking about this, this recently happening. I was trying to use any other word, but it being his the last time this happened. And I think, if you're looking at this, it's not 100% still the answer that you want. I mean, you'd love to hear that, better than ever. Not a doubt in my mind, but we're not going to get that. So it's worrisome, but in the status quo way, I guess, where it's like, I would love to know that he's like, it's responding better. This is a better response than, the Olympics and how I felt then. I would love to hear something like that. I don't think that we're going to get that for a while until we truly know what the impact is, if there is any, residual swelling, how it feels when he's traveling, etc. So I don't want to say that it's not worrisome, but it's not worrisome in the way that this article was particularly worded or worrisome compared to really any other time, I suppose, with Kawhi Leonard.
That's a good point. Any of the other returns, it's been the same thing. We all watched that depressing game that was his return to Staples against the Mavs. Like, that was horrible. But yeah, the word recently should not be in there. I hope it gets changed. I don't think it will. But yeah, upsetting, not the best way to report that news. Now, expectations. People are excited. Kawhi Leonard is back. I talked to a lot of people last night at Intuit who were firmly on the championship, Western Conference Finals. Then we'll see what happens train. We know Will's shirt has answered all the questions that he's being asked of my shirt says this is our year. How are we feeling? I know we did the were talking last time it was all together. We were talking, like it's probably going to be 4 or 5 seed. The West is crazy tight. Seeing him out there last night really made me. I cannot wait for playoff basketball for this Clippers team, because they're going to be a problem if they get home court. I think they probably win the first round, and then I don't know what happens because the West is crazy. But Adam, how are you feeling? Were you buoyed last night by seeing Kawhi back, or have your expectations remained the same?
It's pretty much the same. That was the type of performance I was expecting. The threes were a little bit surprising, but it's also just one game. I was just going off of how he looked like from distance when he came back from the ACL, and it really took him some time to start knocking him down from the outside. So that was encouraging. That was good to see, but still want to see him explode, have a dunk, have a tough layup, open up as he's running down the court and get into sixth gear. But last night, I don't know. I don't want to say it was more about the Atlanta Hawks just being that bad, because I think the Clippers, they forced their will on them and made Atlanta kind of tap out, because they realize, oh, this defense is really good. The only way we're winning tonight is if we get unusually hot from three, and that's probably not going to happen. So I guess we're going 0-2 in LA. That's
yeah, they're
what
not
I
the
kind of
Petals, right?
Yeah, I don't know. My expectations are still the same. I felt like if they have Kawhi close to the version they had last season with this squad that they have put together, they do have a chance against anyone in the West in a 7-game series.
I like that. And Will, I mean, of course, it is our year, but how do you see this playoff series going?
I mean, this is our year was still dependent on Kawhi Leonard returning. So not much has changed there. I think it just really depends on where can you get yourself in the standings. Things are pretty tight right now, like 4 through 7. It's like a half a game. There is some maneuvering to be going on. Fourth is the Denver Nuggets at 20-14. We're currently at 20-15.
Damn.
So there is quite a lot of maneuvering to happen. We'll see. I don't know, man. We've talked about this. I know that it would be different. I really don't want a 4 or 5 first round meeting with the Mavs again.
Well, did you guys see that clip of Luka at their last game? Dude, he's like,
I never know when he's hamming it up. Gotta be honest.
I mean,
he was acting like his damn ankle was broken that one series. He was fine
on the court. I get that, but that footage, dude, he is like, he's barely able to stand
that's
up.
fan service.
How is that fan service? It's to freak everyone out. Yeah, I like Adam. Same with me. Like, it didn't exactly make me think like there's still going to be such a problem in the playoffs to play the Clippers at Intuit. The home court is going to be so crucial. Shout out to the Wall last night for being incredibly into the game as well. But they're not going to be able to. Some seasons it's like, oh, if they lose this last game, they get this opponent, or if they win this last game, they get that opponent. I don't think that's going to be in play this year. I think a lot of teams are not going to know who they're playing until the season is maybe directly over, if these standings stay like this, except for the Thunder, of course, because I don't think they're going anywhere. But a lot of these teams in that middle section of the playoff standings, it's going to be jumping around a ton.
I mean, last season, we didn't know till the very end between Denver and Minnesota, like who was the 2 and who was the 3, right? So there was some of that jockeying for position late. Yeah, it'll be more of the same. Nobody's going to be able to pick their opponent out there. And that's what the NBA wants. And that's kind of the downside for a top seed, that you don't know who's coming out of the play-in to play you. That can be problematic, but yeah, OKC is so good. I'm sure they're not worried about it.
Yeah, I think OKC is going to be okay. I don't like how tight the standings are. Hot take. The Clippers, the Clippers and Spurs are separated by 2 games, and the Spurs are 9th. The Spurs look like they might be figuring some stuff out too. Wemby is a terror upon this league, and his reign, who knows when it's going to end. It hasn't started yet, but it'll be crazy. Yeah, I'm just excited to see Kawhi in playoff basketball. Should things continue on this trajectory of looking good. Before we talk about this next topic, is there anything else basketball related we'd like to discuss about Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs or expectations? More than half the people I talked to yesterday said they expect the Western Conference Finals, so I hope that happens.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go here. Kawhi's back for one game. He's played 20 minutes. I'm going to be gripping the rest of the season, just wondering after the game, the next day, is he going to wake up and his knee's going to flare up again? Because that's a real possibility, unfortunately.
Yeah, 20 minutes yesterday and 20 minutes for the foreseeable future. We don't really know when this minutes restriction is going to be up. 10 games would probably be my guess. I don't know if he's all good. But the real stuff, because occasionally we talk about the art form known as cinema here on Clips and Dip. Are we excited for Kawhi's movie that he's producing about himself? Because that information came out yesterday. He has a movie coming out. Law Murray asked him about the fantastic New Balance ads that have kind of come out before his return. Those were great. The Fred Rogan version that Adam made is so funny. Well done on that.
I haven't heard from Fred about it. He might be pissed.
That's so good. We're all going to the premiere, right? Whenever this thing comes out. Is it about Kawhi?
Yeah.
I think it's just about Kawhi.
Does it tie in? He said these are like the teas, him fishing and stuff. Like a full-length movie with Kawhi, a guy who doesn't talk that much. How is this going to work?
I don't know. I'm excited. I'm assuming New Balance is probably producing some kind of short film that's about like either Kawhi's road to recovery or because his life is absolutely insane too. If you know anything about the background of Kawhi Leonard,
are silent films back in 2025?
Dude, it would 100. It's going to be black and white, just a montage of him doing knee workouts, and then like the only sound is going to be him dribbling a basketball, and it's going to cut to black.
Hey, I'm all in, whatever it is.
Yeah, we have to go to the premiere. At the very least, we have to. Yeah, I'm hyped. Will, what are you expecting? Do you? I hope that Werner Herzog is involved somehow. It seems like those two would really mesh and vibe. Will, what are you expecting from the Kawhi film, of which we don't know a whole bunch about?
Oh, I mean, I have no idea. Is it doc? Is he starring in it? Is it narrative? I don't know, man. I don't know what to expect. I will say in general, I wish that athletes would. I wish that more objective parties would produce these things. That's all I'm going to say.
I like that idea.
And that this isn't specifically about Kawhi. It's just, I feel like sports documentaries like the 30 for 30, they used to feel like so special, and then now we get one like every few months, and it's kind of just like a lip service kind of thing that's not really, it doesn't go that deep. It's a little surface level, kind of quickly falls away into the void. So I don't know.
I do hope it's a narrative. I hope it's a narrative film and not a documentary.
I think that'd be sick. Like I think a dramatized. I think kind of a dramatized thing would be. I would find that to be more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Whenever it comes out, it's gonna be a phenomenal event, and I'm sure there will be some fantastic cover. I just want to see snippets.
It's gonna be a quiet place.
Yeah, a quiet place is what it's gonna be called. And the twist is that he's going to get everyone killed by making noise.
Spike Lee's return to basketball films.
I mean, Spike Lee directing the Kawhi New Balance injury recovery movie. Yeah, I'm in 100% of the time. Kawhi also had a bit of what did he say yesterday? Just putting paint on the canvas in the post-game interview with Lauren Rosen. Something artistic is brewing up in this guy's brain. The post-basketball pop art era of Kawhi Leonard is going to be something to look out for. Are we expecting a good quote per interview now from Kawhi? Because he kind of set the bar pretty high for the post-game interview with that one.
TBD.
Yeah, I mean, we got him talking about Jeff Van Gundy post-game, saying how JVG loves to tell everyone how much film he's watching. I watched the shit out of film or something.
old basketball guy thing to say. I watched the shit out of film yesterday. You're like, okay, those words don't really go together like that, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's like Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. I killed the hell out of him.
Exactly. There's some NFL coach, I think it was the old Giants coach, he only watched tape using a Wii remote. So they had to like put tape onto like Wii. I don't know. It was just thing. I bet Van Gundy has some weird thing like that where he's like, no, I watch tape. Give me an actual
he was
tape.
in broadcast. He knows how to use that.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's either iPad or double reel film.
I mean, I wish it was like him in a dark room with a projector, but he was in media. He knows how to use the iPad.
That'd be so funny. All right, let us know your thoughts on Kawhi's film. If you have any information,
let us know your expectations.
Yeah, let us know the expectations for Kawhi Leonard's film. Give us your synopsis of what you think it's about. Tweet it at us at ClippersPod. Let us know in the comments at youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to be talking the road trip. Clippers play the Nuggets and the Wolves on Monday and Wednesday, and then just what we're hoping to see out of those games. If you're listening, there's going to be some ads. If you're watching, our beautiful faces are still here. Clippers roadie and player of the road trip picks coming up in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back in. It's Clips and Dip, Season 3, Episode 39. I'm Adam Moslin. We got the big three with Chuck Mockler and Will Updike here. And the Clippers back out on the road. It was just a one-off at Intuit Dome, where they won by 26 last night over the Atlanta Hawks in Kawhi Leonard's return. Now he's with the squad on the road trip, starting in Minnesota tomorrow, where, I don't want to say return to the scene of the crime, but they lost a heartbreaker 93-92 earlier this season, where the Clippers had some really bad turnovers. And Chris Dunn took the brunt of the criticism, even though I think it was
people
kind of
wanted to trade Chris Dunn after that. It was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, the guy goes up and gets a rebound over Rudy Gobert and then loses the basketball for a board he never should have been able to get in the first place. It's a big game. Clippers are 0-2 against them. They got mollywopped, as the kids say, by the Minnesota Timberwolves back at Intuit Dome in Game 2 between them this season. And overall, Minnesota's kind of had their number for years.
Yeah, and then they play the Nuggets. Which of these games is harder? Because the Nuggets are hitting kind of a weird stride. Russ is going to be motivated. He's been playing well. I'm not sure which.
Minnesota is down bad. I was listening to Chris Finch post-game after their loss when Ant had 53 against Detroit. Like, they are miserable right now. The locker room is fractured. They are ripe for the picking, but they're also a desperate team trying to figure out how to turn their season around. It's kind of just the same place they were the last time the Clippers played them in Minnesota. That was right after Anthony Edwards came out and called everybody soft.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we do know if the Clippers send doubles at Anthony Edwards, he will not like that. So I would not be surprised if we see. So the Minnesota game, I feel like, will agree, disagree. Derek Jones Jr. in the starting lineup, given their size.
I just don't know how long he's going to stick with this.
The rotating?
Yeah, well, like like how long is enough time to rotate? I don't know. I think it would make sense, but like I said, I'm biased. I think it would make sense yesterday.
100% of the time. I think it's going to be Derek Jones Jr. I think we're going to throw some weird looks at Anthony Edwards. I'm nervous about both of them, I guess.
The Timberwolves have lost 3 straight, which is just never a spot I want to be in.
Right. It's hard to lose 4 in a row, right? And I wanted to bring this up too, because Adam, you were talking about this on Clippers Talk. We haven't talked about it a bunch here. Clippers rebounding has been not good over the last 10 games or so. Wolves are 10th in rebounds per game over the last 5 games. Nuggets and Clippers are tied at 16th. With Kawhi back, how do we see him helping the rebounding thing? When do we think we're pulling out of this back to normal, or is this going to be the new normal?
I mean, I think he did start things off last night with a board. I think that was the first time he touched the basketball. That might be a sign. Kawhi's a very good rebounder for his position or for his size, you could say, out there. He's going to help. And I think overall, it's just hard to maintain the level of effort it takes to board at the rate that they were with a smaller group to start off the year. They could hold it up for maybe 15 games, but the last 15 games, they're 20th in rebounding percentage.
And you had
So
absences
there's a
of
pretty steep
DJJ and
decline.
Terance Mann.
Yeah. Man, I think that's probably an underrated area that we didn't think about they'd be missing him just on the glass, because that was a point of emphasis coming into this season that the coaching staff really wanted Terance Mann to board. So I think it will improve. I don't think it's dire straits when it comes to the rebounding department. There's a lot of different factors that have gone into why they haven't been as good recently.
Some would say Terrence Boardman gets paid. All right, thank you. I'll get out of here. That's one of the best worst jokes we've had. What are we hoping? I think from Kawhi, what I'm hoping to see on this road trip actually has kind of the court might be secondary to me on what I want to see from Kawhi on this road trip. I want to see how the knees reacting after the travel day in between, and the pre and the post game is what I'm kind of most anxious isn't the right word, focused on, I think, from Kawhi, because this is not the easiest travels, right? They play, they travel, they play again, a team that's very difficult, Mile High, that whole thing. I expect the defense to kind of be what we saw. Offense, it's going to happen when it happens for Kawhi. Right now, I'm just like, these first 10 games, I just like, how's the knee responding? That's all I'm really cared about.
Yeah,
the core will get figured out.
With his first game on the road, truly the only thing I'm looking for is him to play 20 minutes in both games. I would just like him to hit his minutes limit in both games. You know, I don't want to say whatever that looks like, because I don't want him to be limping into those minutes, obviously. But like, I'm not super concerned about, you know, any sort of box score or anything. I think, you know, what we saw last night was an indication that he's on the right track, and if he's just staying on the floor, you know, I'm I'm trusting enough in the incremental improvement that it's going to get there. This is just the first heavy travel. And it's a lot of travel in just a couple of days.
Yeah.
So I just want to see it. My benchmark is play 20 minutes in both games.
And for what it's worth, he's not on the injury report at all for the game on Monday. He's not questionable. He's not on that thing at all. Adam, what say you, part two?
Yeah, I think staying on the floor for Kawhi is the new win right now. You got one guy who's in preseason mode and is only going to play 20 minutes, and the rest of the team still trying to figure out how to play around him. And they were really good against Atlanta doing that. But I assume in one of these two games, it's going to be clunky. It's just going to happen because it's natural. He's too big of a piece to where they're going to have some issues. But I still feel like overall he's going to be a net positive, and they have a better chance with him, even in 20 minutes, even with him in second gear at most. I will take that.
Yeah, second gear Kawhi is better than a lot of players, and it's kind of where he needs to be. You know what I mean? We talked about, like, defensively, the instincts, those are there. If he would have been going crazy on drives or anything like that last night, I would have been like, let's maybe pump this back a little bit. Like, don't try and KPJ style dunk everything or anything like that. So staying on the court, I think that's a great benchmark. Who is going to be our player of the road trip for this? And now I don't think we have to add Kawhi Leonard to the players we can't pick, right? Or because he's coming back, if he's on a minutes restriction.
Come on.
Even with the minutes restriction?
Coward.
Adam, who's your player of the road trip? Who is now the new name is the honorable Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Norm Powell, Avitsa for the starting five, player of the road trip.
This has gotten absurd.
That's how the team's built, man.
I'm going to pick DJ.
God dang it.
Come out of his shooting funk from 3. 2 for 22. I knew there'd be some regression, but this is serious right now. And he talked about it a little bit post game. Tomer kind of joked like, "You just going to dunk everything now?" And he mentioned how, well, he's not shooting it very well from 3. But he also said, "But I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to keep putting them up." And they need him to. So I'm hoping he knocks down some key 3-pointers and just kind of reestablishes a little bit more of a baseline. Just shoot it around. All I wanted this season from him was to shoot it at 36% from three. And that is a huge victory to bring in a guy with that level of defense and pop with his athleticism. If he shoots it at league average from three, that's beautiful. But right now, he's been so bad that it took him down from shooting like 45% the first month and a half down to 35%.
That's how averages work.
So
he's at 35%.
35.4%.
I know, but they don't always swing that dramatically.
I know what you're saying.
Do you think he starts either of these games?
Yes.
Both? Kind of big teams.
I think there's a decent chance he starts both.
Will, your player?
Because they have Jaden McDaniels is a guy with size out there. Anthony Edwards is shorter, but you don't even realize that because he jumps so high. Mike Conley's undersized and old now, but they have a bigger team. Both these teams are on the bigger Ranger size.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts either. Will, your pick for player of the road trip?
Man, I'm going to go with a guy who's been sort of consistently inconsistent. But after last night, we talked briefly about his return. I'm hoping that Terance Mann continues to be on the right track. Hoping that he continues with the rebounding. I liked that he seemed less deferential. He was still giving up the ball, but he was comfortable finding his spots and looking to score. So I just really hope that he's back on the right track. I hope that, as Ty Lue said earlier, got his guy back. That's what I want. And
him being good helps. Yeah, it just gives Ty looks for lineups in the playoffs. So I think it helps Kawhi a little bit. Terance is a good pick. That's exactly who I was going to pick. So now I need to kill some time. I think so. We got DJJ, Terance Mann. I'm going to say it because he's kind of. We're going to see some small ball lineups against these big ass teams. And Nico Batum is going to be playing the 5. And Nico at the 5 has a lot of responsibility. Not in a bad way. He can do it. But I'm interested to see Nico grow more into this Nico at the 5 role with a couple guys he hasn't been in lineups with before. So he's my pick for player of the road trip. Not going to be a sexy box score, but he's going to be +9 and a 3-point win or something like that. And he's going to bother Jokic at some point.
Good picks, guys.
The Jokic stopper.
Yeah. And when are the Clippers trading for a Jokic stopper? That's what I wanted to talk about next.
Is that even what you need? Is that even what you need now?
No.
Don't you need the Shea stopper or something?
Yeah. We need a guy. How about this? Clippers trade for a guy who can guard any star really well.
In NBA history.
Yes. Oh, you could take this guy.
Shaq.
Bob Cousy. Seatbelt. Nothing. Shaq. Get out of here.
Who?
Huh? Yeah. PJ Tucker and Bones will get it done. You add a second round pick, we're finding somebody.
The 0-point game was on film.
He'll bring a camera, okay? And that 100-point game will turn into a 0-point game. And then we'll have footage of it. Okay.
Sorry.
That about wraps things up.
Fun twist. Wilt Chamberlain landed on the moon, but did not have 100 points in that game.
That would, I'd take that. He's holding a picture of just the moon. He's got a little drawing of the moon on it. Someone Photoshop that and send it to us at Clippers Pod. Okay, we got to give a couple shout outs on this outro. We have to give a shout out to Daniel Perez. He listens to the show. Will and I met him yesterday. He seemed very nice. Thank you for listening to the show.
Yeah, great to see you after a game.
Yes. We also have to give a shout out to the Clippers comms people who helped Will and I get through what turned into a very secure situation to get into Intuit. Adam, I'm going to tell you, everyone has to hear the story. So if you're media and you have a bag and you're going into Intuit, you go to where everyone's kind of queuing up at the pedestrian bridge. You go all the way to the other side and you say, hey, I'm media, a Clippers employee. It's important. This person works for the team. goes, hello, you have a bag, get it through the bag check, and then go get your credential in the media check-in, which is in the stadium itself. 2 different areas. Every single game that we've been to, no issue. Put the bag in, get the tag.
Even game one.
Get the tag, walk over the Sky Bridge, go to the media check-in. The very helpful people there give you this beautiful media pass I'm looking at now. For some reason yesterday, the new system was you had to have a credential to get your bag checked. This is what the security people were telling us. And I politely, Will was there, he can vouch, I politely pointed out that our credentials are in the stadium. So how can I go get my credential, come back here, go through the bag check? It just doesn't make any sense. The security company did not care for my gentle nudge to the logical road. Anyway, it was incredibly frustrating. The Clippers comms people, we were not the only people to have this problem. They made it happen. Everyone got through. No worries. Shout out to the Clippers comms people. And I hope that guy who had a present go through was able to get in. There was some guy who had like
he
a
had
gift
wrapped,
for somebody.
He had like a wrapped box, which
it looked sketchy. You can't have a wrapped gift.
I'm sure it was fine. I want to trust that it was fine, but
sure. But optics. Anyway, that's the rest. That's the end of the shout outs. Shout out Daniel Perez. Shout out to the Clippers comms people, some of which I think listened to this show, which was really cool. We're maybe doing a live after the Wolves game tomorrow. Could be fun. Game's at 5, I believe, our time. We're going to do a full episode for y'all on Thursday. Will, now that the New Year's is over and people are going to break their old resolutions next Friday, what's a new resolution maybe that people could tell them to experience, and where could they find that content for that new resolution?
Yeah, your resolution should be get 3 friends to listen to Clips and Dip. They can do that anywhere they get their podcasts. If they want to check it out over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave little ratings, reviews. It always helps us out. But to get the fullest experience of this podcast, which sometimes includes my video melting for some reason I'm not quite sure of.
Adam's in a void. I love it.
It's probably an acid flashback coming to my computer. You can check us out over on youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. But hey, however you listen, you engaged with this show, we appreciate you. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Adam. We've gone from light to dark. We need one positive thing to send these folks out to start this first week of work again for some of us. God damn. Give us something positive.
So check this out. Clippers are in a win-win situation. Lakers are down 8 with about 6 minutes left against Houston. If the Lakers lose, well, the Lakers lose. If the Lakers win, they help the Clippers chase down the Houston Rockets in the standings, and OKC doesn't take their pick. Not bad.
Not bad. I'll take that. That's the kind of energy we need for the rest of this year. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for watching. Again, you can find us at ClippersPod on Twitter, youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. We'll be back for y'all tomorrow, most likely. And if not, full episode on Thursday talking everything that happens. Yeah. And as always, let's go Clips.
Indeed.